Hello Orchid friends, welcome back to my channel. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, staying healthy and staying safe.
Today we're looking at my miniature Phalaenopsis orchid. This one is a no ID. I got it from a local grocery store. So it's a grocery store phal. This orchid was repotted last time after its previous bloom cycle. But what I only changed, the only thing I changed was really the medium. It was a mixture really, a mixture of lava rocks, bark chips, and some shredded or cut up sphagnum moss, whatever I had at the time. And this time around, I chose a inorganic media mix. So it's really something I'm trying out, and it's the medium of choice that I preferred. The biggest reason for its previous repot was simply because it was having also too many aerial roots hanging out, and I wanted to reduce the amount of horizontal space that this orchid was taking up. So I decided to give it a repot, but then also it had been a few years since I repotted this orchid, so I thought it was time. I remember right after the repot, this orchid immediately took off in terms of root growth and leaf production. And then when it was time, which is late winter, this orchid started to pull out its flower spike. I had no doubt that this orchid would rebloom during the immediate spring, or I guess re-spike during the immediate winter and then bloom in the following spring. So this orchid is slightly fragrant, but the fragrance is very powdery. It's not citrusy like some other fragrant orchids in my collection. This orchid is also very vigorous because I haven't really done anything too special to it other than the same amount of fertilizer dosage, 25%, and then each time this orchid receives about quarter cup of water. I do provide this orchid with a little bit more water than say it's but then potted in a different medium or different container. And the reason for that is this is in a clay pot, and clay pots we know are very porous, so water dissipates a little bit more quickly. I love how this orchid is sitting in a clay pot, but then outside of this clay pot I have a plastic cup as a saucer. Typically quarter cup of water will always have some excess water at the bottom. However, because the clay pot is porous, it actually over time wicks up the water from the bottom. So this orchid can still get adequate amount of water and still be able to complete the wet-dry cycle in a week in my environment. So I think this setup is really beneficial, convenient, and it obviously is preferred, or obviously this orchid likes it. Judging by its current aerial roots amount, I think in 1 year or two I may have to repot this orchid again, because right now the roots are already kind of crazy, and at some point really I will have to repot it just to put the roots back into the medium. And next time, depending on the amount of the root system, I may have to uppot it, meaning I have to use a different container. But because the clay pots I have are all small, tiny like these, so next time if I uppot it, I'll have to use a 12 ounce or maybe 16 ounce plastic cup. Now I know for orchid hobbyists that are kind of new to this hobby, you probably may not feel comfortable using clay pot. So transparent pots are obviously easier to see what's inside, if the roots are growing, things like that. But after some time, a few couple of years, once you feel comfortable, clay pots are actually really good containers for orchids. I mean, all you really have to make sure is that you control the water amount, and then the clay pots would really help you, I guess, regulate or wake up additional moisture or dissipate the moisture quickly if it needs to, because it's porous. So this is the orchid's bloom video, a clip to kind of give you a sense of what it looked like. This time around, it actually has a additional branch. Previous years, previous blooms, this orchid had always just given me single long flower spike, but this time for the first time it's actually giving me a little tiny branch. And later you're gonna see a couple comparison photos. I have another orchid that I believe is exact the same kind as this orchid, except that one I mounted to a cup. It was actually a rescue from the New York Botanical Garden when I was living there. That one is definitely fragrant, and then this one, this time around, is starting to give me fragrance. It's probably because it's gotten more mature. When my mini Phalaenopsis orchids are in flower, I also tend to provide them with a little bit more water than I normally would, because if you look at the amount of flower, it's actually quite large compared to the surface area of its leaf, just in terms of volume. I think that it would require a little bit more moisture to sustain the flowers to be looking the way we want them to. So I sometimes would spray down the area roots for this one, but then with other ones that don't have as many area roots but are in flower, I would just simply give them a little bit more water during the week, like in the middle of a week, because I usually water my orchids on the weekends, but then usually on Wednesdays or Thursdays I would then give them a little bit extra, maybe another 5 milliliter or maybe 10 milliliter. Not much, but just a little bit extra in the midweek. And these are just some comparison photos like I told you about. The orchid today is on the left, and then the one on the right is the orchid mounted to a cup that I have hung on the top of my grow space, my growing rack. I think they are the same type of orchid. And by the way, if you look at the back of the flower, they look amazing because they have that purple stripes, which I find pretty amazing as well. All in all, I think this orchid is doing pretty good. Next time around, hopefully it'll give us more branch and maybe more bloom.
This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!